Gentlemen, boys and girls, to the House Committee on Education. We are going to go ahead and get started. I do want to let you all know we're online in the other room, so if we can't everybody fit in here, you're welcome to sit in the room next door through that door. There's plenty of chairs in there as well. And if you are a conferee and hear your name to come testify, if you're in there, you're welcome to walk right in and we'll wait for you. Just make your grand entrance like a boss through that door, okay? So we're going to go a little out of order to start today out of respect for one of our colleagues, a couple of our colleagues' time. So we're going to open the hearing first on House Bill 2709. So with that, I will turn to our reviser, Jason Long. Welcome to our committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 2709 would create a new statute directing the State Board of Education to designate a week during each school year as Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Week for those public schools that offer grades 6 through 12. The State Board would also develop statewide standards for instruction on the prevention of abuse and addiction to fentanyl and other opioids. The bill also requires each Board of Education of a school district to adopt policies and procedures to provide age-appropriate instruction on the prevention of the abuse and addiction to fentanyl and other opioids. And that instruction is based on the statewide standards adopted by the State Board of Education and would include prevention of abuse and addiction to fentanyl, awareness of school and community resources that are available to help with abuse and addiction issues, education on over-the-counter medications, if there's an overdose and how to administer those medications, and general health education on substance abuse and abuse of controlled substances. The Board of Education, each school district can provide that education through their school district personnel, or they may partner with local law enforcement or other community partners to provide that instruction during the Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Week. This would go into effect on July 1st of this year, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jason. Committee, questions for the reviser? All right, very good. Thank you. With that, for the sake of time, I'm going to turn to the proponents first, and I will turn to our colleague, Representative Martinez. Welcome to our committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. I strongly support this legislation because fentanyl deaths are climbing. From the negative effects to too much screen time, excess to negative social media, to death by fentanyl, our youth are in a crisis. The lack of awareness by parents and students is a huge factor. Education is necessary to curb this crisis, and we need to take immediate action to empower our young people to make informed decisions on their own when they're away from home, away from parents or adults, when they are at a party or hanging out with friends, or when they are in the company of someone who is about to buy or take this deadly pill. Fentanyl is different from typical substance abuse. With fentanyl, you most likely will not have the time to establish a habit-forming addiction because as little as 2 milligrams can kill a person, just 3 granules the size of salt or sugar. Fentanyl is being mixed into other drugs unbeknownst to the person taking the pill or smoking the marijuana laced with fentanyl. Fentanyl is being sold online at schools. It's cheap. It's only at $8 a pill. A student may think they're buying a pill to help focus for a test or to complete assignments, a pill for energy or relax, or just to plain old get high. In an article interviewing Sedgwick County Sheriff Jeff Easter, he shared that nationwide teen drug overdoses have doubled in the last 10 years, but fentanyl overdoses have gone from 38 in 2010 to 883 in 2021. Students in schools are a standing audience for this vital education. In my 30 years working with youth in my community and workplace, I've always held true to the notion that second to the home, the schools have the greatest potential for impact, as all students will learn the same thing with this education in a school. They can support one another with these tools. This type of education will equip them with all situations. With fentanyl deaths on the rise, it's not a matter of when or if our youth may have to put it into action. It's what can be, but we can teach it in the school. A big reason I am here as a legislator before you is because I care about what kind of Kansas my 14 school-aged grandkids are growing up in. I've always held true. Oh, I'm sorry, lost my place. I care about the future of our youth and what we can do as part of the village it takes to raise them into successful, productive members of society. I'm a first-term legislator. I have recently been made aware of the stakeholders' opposition and concerns, and I have complete faith that if this committee chooses to work this bill, that those concerns will be addressed. And I welcome amendments to make this life-saving legislation better and get it out to our youth as soon as possible. Power is preparedness. Preparedness is power. Let's empower our kids to take charge of their lives by making right, informed decisions and giving them this education. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Representative.
Okay.
We also have our other colleague, Representative Melton, here to testify. Representative, welcome to our committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to offer the following testimony on House Bill 2709. Fentanyl is a deadly drug with usage spreading rapidly. It doesn't discriminate against race, age, sex, or social status. This bill would assist in the work already being done by our SROs and school staff. This drug is deadly, cheap, and readily available. It often comes disguised or hidden in other less deadly drugs. Most of the time, the user is not even aware of what is in it or what is in what they're using. I appreciate the work being done by our law enforcement, KBI, school boards, and staff, and I think this bill would aid in that help. Thank you for your opportunity to speak and urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We'll move along to Jeff Easter, Sedgwick County Sheriff. Is Jeff here? Okay. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarifications. I'm unable to find the last two compeers' testimonies.
They came in late. They went to the incorrect email, so we just got them, but we have them, and we'll get them posted. We'll move right along to Bob Stewart with KBI. Sir, welcome to our committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name's Bob Stewart. I'm the executive officer of the KBI. I was here last week, of course, testifying on behalf of House Bill 2613, and it would probably be inappropriate for me to just stand here and say ditto. But I'm, in essence, going to do just that and reiterate to you our commitment to our observations about the deadliness of fentanyl, that we've never seen anything in our law enforcement experience like it, that in the last 5 years, our lab is now finding positive tests in more than 3,000 more percent than we ever had before. It's just it's overwhelming. The economies of scale of the pills. You heard the representative say they're $8 a pill. We're now finding them at $2 a pill. So it's getting cheaper and easier to get. To that end, the KBI wants to stand in front of you and tell you that we are committed to help in any way we can with our experience and to help our educators and our healthcare professionals come up with the best way to teach our kids how this works. It is not for us to determine the right method, and I know there are people that are going to disagree about that. However that works out with you all, the KBI stands beside and wants to help, and we'll be committed with our resources to providing whatever educational capabilities we have. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Very good. We also have written testimony from Curtis Nicholson, Chief of Police, KCK. Is there anybody else who provided proponent testimony on this bill that might have come in late? Seeing none, very good. Questions, committee, for the proponents. Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would be for Mr. Stewart. So you said something that caught my attention, is that the KBI would be willing to work with local boards of school boards or the state Board of Education in developing the right information to get out to the students?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We certainly aren't the experts in the education part, but we are the ones that see what happens on the street. We are the ones that are responding out there. We are the ones interdicting the baggies full of little blue pills, which are aimed at our kids. And so we think we can bring something to the table in terms of helping figure out what that curriculum looks like, but also in the lines of the DARE officers that are out there, help support and teach and be in the gymnasiums with the with the school assemblies, whatever we need to do to help.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions from the committee? Very good. Seeing none, I will turn to the neutrals. With us today, we have Ann Ma and Dina Hurst of KSDE. Welcome back to our committee.
Yes, sir. I think this might be my first time in your committee this year, and I really want to thank you personally. I know we've had a lot of discussions about issues, but it's really nice to come to a committee and have an atmosphere where you can have a good discussion about tough topics and not be, adversarial. So if I've blown the appropriate amount of smoke now, I'll get to my testimony. The State Board of Education is neutral on this bill for a number of reasons. Number one, we already have set standards on substance use, abuse, and addiction. And I put a link to those standards in my testimony so you can see exactly what we've done. They are age appropriate. As you know, the State Board of Education is, by the Constitution and several court cases, the folks who have the purview over standards. So we would disagree that anybody needs to set those for us. As you probably also know, we do not establish curriculum. We set the standards. We let the local folks decide what curriculum they want to use. And there are many, many things out there related to fentanyl and other drugs that are for them to use. I think the Attorney General is looking to bring the DARE program back. We like that. You may be familiar with Red Ribbon Week. There are just a ton of different curricula available. In fact, the State Board of Education is very interested in this issue, just as we were in vaping a few years ago. So last month, we had a presentation from the KBI on the fentanyl issue, and I have to tell you, I think to a person, we were all extremely concerned about it. In fact, I think I also put reference in my testimony to the KDADS program where you can get free Narcan and fentanyl test strips. And if you haven't ordered yours, just go online and get them. I got one to keep in my car and one to give to my granddaughter. And she goes, I don't take drugs. And I said, yeah, but if you're in a location where somebody passes out due to a drug overdose, how great would it be if you could just save their life? So the State Board is extremely, extremely concerned about this. And more information does save lives. But frankly, the last thing we need is a prescribed week in law for fentanyl. And the reason is these issues change over time. And once you put it in law, it's there forever. Like I said, 2 years ago, it was vaping. So the State Board of Education got together with KDHE. We asked them to help us develop some materials. We got them out to all the schools, and within a couple of years, the number of kids who were vaping or saying they were vaping was dropping. But then fentanyl comes to the forefront. Who knows, next year it may be another drug or another drug. In fact, in some communities, the issue is drugs. In another community, it might be bullying or suicide. You could have 50 weeks on 50 different things that schools and families and kids are dealing with. So we would be more than happy to work with the KBI, the legislators, or anybody who's interested in doing similar to what we did with vaping for fentanyl at this time. And we can move very quickly. We started in the summer and had materials out by fall. So anybody who's interested in this topic, just come talk to us. But we don't need a law to make that happen. We can move much faster and be much more flexible if you just let us do our job. So thank you very much, and I'd be glad to stand for questions.
I believe you are only neutral, so the time for questions is now. I'll start. Did you purposefully start with blowing smoke and then mention vaping?
No, but wasn't that cool?
That was.
Tell you what.
Okay, that was clever on your part. Thank you. Committee, questions for our neutral testimony here?
All right.
Seeing none. Thank you. All right, now we'll turn to opponent testimony. I will welcome Tim Graham with the KNEA. Welcome to our committee.
Hello. So as a parent, I do want to thank Representative Martinez and Representative Melton for having this bill drafted. And I want to thank you for having this discussion, having a hearing on it. Fentanyl is a serious problem, a serious drug, and it scares me as a parent. With that being said, we have to ask you to oppose this bill, and I'll get into that here in a second. I want you to know that KNEA is extremely concerned about the opioid epidemic that is affecting the nation. Our members have debated and adopted several resolutions that focus on the health, safety, and welfare of the students. Many of these resolutions speak to substance abuse and addiction, and I'll read one of those right now. Kansas NEA believes that local and state governments should develop, establish, and implement policies to protect school districts, personnel, students, and communities from substance addiction and abuse. So we're very serious about this and have been for a long time. As a matter of fact, in 2023, last year during the legislative session, we supported H.Bill 2390. That was a bill that would allow the use of fentanyl strips to be used as a resource to prevent overdose and save lives by protecting students, educators, and school staff from the potential harm due to exposure to fentanyl should they encounter and be identified as substance in the school, should they encounter an unidentified substance in the school building. So basically what that bill did was take it out of being called drug paraphernalia and allowed it to be in the school buildings, and we supported that bill. So we are serious about this. Our concern with HB 27 is the legislature directing the state school board to develop statewide standards that probably already exist, and Ann Mall has said that they do. Kansas NEA is also concerned with the legislature directing local school boards to adopt policies and standards on the issues that should be debated elsewhere. These are actions and decisions that should be left to the Kansas Board of Education and local school boards of education. We very much understand the seriousness of this issue, which I've stated several times here, and the urgency and the need to respond, and I sincerely state that to you. The response, however, has to be done using the standards that are already in place and the processes that have been established to ensure that local voices are heard. Now, here's the thing that I want to close with. We all need to use our own bully pulpits to elevate our voices and come together on this issue. And we are committed to being part of that process. We are committed to doing our part, and even though we oppose the bill because of the language in it that says shall, local school boards shall, or the State Board of Education shall, we are committed to helping with this. And the great thing about this bill is it gets us talking, and it's already caused us to have conversations and have agreement on how we can all get together and help stop this serious problem. So thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Questions for the opponent? Very good. I have a question for you, Tim. So, well, just a quick question. You talked about how your group meets and you pass resolutions. So I want to hear more about that. So when the NEA gets together and passes a resolution, I know that's an organizational thing. Where does that go? Does that go to the school boards and you say, we've adopted this and we'd like to implement it, or is this just KNEA policy amongst their members?
It's KNEA policy. So what we have every year is what we call the representative assembly, where we have anywhere from, depending on what year it is, anywhere from 200 to possibly 500 members that are selected by their peers and their locals to come up and represent those locals at our representative assembly. A lot of associations do that. I was explaining that process one time to one of your colleagues, and she said that sounds a lot like what the Kansas Livestock Association does. And so a lot of associations use that process. And in that representative assembly, there are resolutions that are proposed, debated, and either rejected or passed, a lot like, we use, I believe, Robert's Rules of Order to do that process. And then if they are passed, they go into our book of resolutions, and then they stay there until they are taken out. So I know you've asked that question before, and I haven't done a good job of explaining that to you, but that's how it works. And so that book of resolutions is what guides myself and others in coming up with our legislative agenda. So when I get up and speak to you, it's not coming from Tim Graham. It's coming from, we always consult our book of resolutions on every piece of legislation when we start to do our testimony, draft our testimony. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Don't discount yourself. We always love hearing from you, Tim.
You do? Well, I appreciate it.
I do.
Yeah.
Further questions, committee? Very good. Thanks, sir. All right, with that, committee, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2709, and we'll open the hearing on House Bill 2641. And to get us started on that bill, I will turn to our reviser, Mr. Jason Long. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2641 would create new law requiring the Board of Education of each school district to adopt policies and procedures to restrict the use of personal cell phones by students during normal school hours. Those policies and procedures must prohibit such use with limited exceptions and also establish the disciplinary consequences for violation of those policies and procedures. The bill does allow some limited use of a personal cell phone in the following instances. If the use of a cell phone is part of the implementation of a student's individualized education program, if a teacher or administrator has authorized the use for educational purposes, but not as a classroom reward, it has to be tied to a particular educational purpose, or if the use has been pre-approved by a teacher or administrator due to health or emergency concerns or other special circumstances that have been worked out, as I said, ahead of time, so it's pre-approved. The bill does define privately owned electronic communication device, but what we're talking about here is generally the cell phone, the smartphone that students have in the classroom, have been bringing into the classroom in some instances, and generally have. This would go into effect on July 1st of this year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Committee, questions for the reviser? Representative Estes.
When you were drafting that, did you find uses where a cell phone would be part of a student's IEP? I've never seen that before, so I'm trying to imagine what that looks like.
Mr. Chairman, I did not draft House Bill 2641, but I can tell you that as a parent of a child with an IEP, that cell phone usage could be declared an assistive device under an IEP plan and therefore necessary for the accommodations and the modifications under that plan.
So like it has some kind of assistive program or app on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
If there's need for a modification such as in communication and being able to communicate, because verbal communication is not your foremost communication methodology, then using an assistive device such as a cell phone may be necessary.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Committee, further questions for the reviser? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, I might have missed it. Did you mention an exception related to ADA requirements or accessibility?
There is an exception due to health or emergency or other special circumstances, so I believe that would fall under that exceptional use.
Thank you.
Very good. Committee, further questions? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, is this a unique bill in the sense, like, are there other things that this mirrors as far as students are not able to bring cell phones or anything else related that this would be similar to?
I'm not aware of any other legislation or statutes that prohibit a particular type of device being brought into the school by a student. So in that respect, I'd say this is somewhat unique.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Committee, further questions for the reviser? Very good. Okay. Thank you, Jason. All right. We're going to start with the proponents. First, I have Gretchen Shanahan. Is Gretchen here? Hi, Gretchen. Welcome to our committee.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gretchen Shanahan. I'm an Overland Park resident. I'm a parent of 2 teenagers that attend middle school in Shawnee Mission School District. I'm a volunteer advocate for the Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play, whose mission is to protect childhood from commercialization and big tech. For the last 2 years, I've served as a volunteer for the Screens in Schools work group and the mental health work group. Screen Time Action.
Sorry, ma'am. Can we check the mic, please? Is it on? Okay, thank you.
Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play's mission, Sorry, let me get back on here. I provide digital wellness presentations to businesses and nonprofits who are interested in creating healthier habits for themselves and their members. I've seen a lot of industry-funded so-called safety and well-being presentations that are merely industry marketing campaigns. I do not receive any industry funding for my work. I am just interested in helping people that want to be their best selves. Last spring, I provided public comment to the Kansas Board of Education to raise awareness of the big tech industry's manipulative, exploitive, and harmful business model and their encroachment of using ed tech in schools as yet another profit pipeline. Myself and fellow advocates have attempted at various levels to address phones, ed tech, and their treasure trove of manipulative digital media. Any parent out there who's struggling with feeling overwhelmed or disorganized or fearful about their students' well-being, their ability to respond to their child's needs, etc., I empathize with you. I realize some of you do not support phones away for the day because you feel a sense of insecurity about that. We all have unplanned lifestyle situations. Life has dealt me many unexpected and traumatic experiences. So I do understand there are unique challenges in each family's routines and situations. If you feel you are that parent, I ask that you consider what you can do to lessen your family's dependence on digital media devices like smartphones. I have some questions for you to ponder. These are not rhetorical questions. These are questions I have asked myself and would like others to think deeply about. Number one, what truths and inconveniences would you have to face for changes to be made for the betterment of all our students? Number two, what is your underlying reason for your constant tether of a phone? Number three, as an adult, who or what makes you feel you have to be prepared to respond at a moment's notice? Why do you feel that heightened responsibility? Number four, how does that heightened responsibility make you feel? Number five, go deeper in these last three questions and ask yourself, what change or action can I take in this relationship or situation in order to take better care of myself? Number six, do you remember a time when you didn't feel you had to keep your phone nearby? What did that feel like? Last, take all of those questions you've asked yourself and consider kids being in your shoes. If school boards and administration are the ones to make decisions, well, why haven't they? Are they locked in bureaucracy, or do they prioritize families who do not set healthy boundaries with devices? We have been facing a health crisis of youth depression, suicide, and other conditions, and these problems that have been exacerbated by overuse of phones and school devices did not start yesterday or post-COVID. Those who do not support this bill do not support what scientific studies and common sense tell us about the public health of children and the best learning environment. Before I say more about scientific studies, I'd like to share some common sense and some myth busting. Number one, this is a digital world. We need to teach our children how to responsibly manage digital devices. False. Social media was not designed for children. The best brain science research and expert psychiatrists tell us that the adolescent brain is not able to manage the addictive pull of portable devices and social media products. For-profit companies that sell these products hire experts in addiction and behavior to design the products to be addictive, to be so addictive that it is nearly impossible for children to resist constantly checking their phones. One experienced high school teacher refers to social media as the digital drug that she has to compete with. It is not a fair fight. Many teachers are fighting the constant battle of students being distracted on their phones and not paying attention in class. Teachers have become the phone police, and many are leaving the profession because they are tired of battling phones. What teachers are having to teach now is face-to-face social skills because students aren't learning these skills naturally through interactions with their peers. Another example, We do not allow or encourage children to drink or smoke in moderation, so they are prepared to drink or smoke when they are 21. Likewise, we should not allow or encourage children to be on social media so we can teach them how to use it in moderation before their brains are fully developed. And I don't see any of you with your phones out today, probably because you learned when you were growing up and in school that that was not the proper thing to do. Okay, so number 2, my child needs their phone in case of a crisis or lockdown at the school. False. So school security experts say phones can actually make children less safe in a crisis situation. Because 1, using phones in an emergency situation can distract children from following the directions of their teachers. 2, the sound of the phone, whether ringing or on vibrate, could alert an assailant to a hiding place. 3, the shooter could be monitoring the event themselves on social media and find more victims or elude capture that way. 4, victims and worried family members trying to get through can jam communications, interfering with first responders. Myth number 3, teachers will have to police phones if there is an all-day phone-free policy in place. False. If there is a building-wide policy supported by administration and consistently enforced, then phones become a non-issue. However, when there isn't a policy being enforced, and it's up to every teacher to decide how to address phones, there is so much inconsistency that students push back, and teachers have to police phones every day. 4, parents will push back on phone policies. False. According to a study, 82% of middle school parents do not want their kids to use cell phones during school. Administrators with all-day phone-free school policies in place in Kansas and across the nation have shared they have had very little parent pushback and instead have received praise for instituting said policies. And lastly, phone-free schools seem like a big burden for teachers and administrators. False. Once this policy in place, a lot of burdens that are currently on teachers are significantly decreased. There is less fighting, less in-school bullying, and more overall positive atmosphere that is conducive for students to learn and thrive. Schools have a huge microphone for the community in terms of health messaging and product endorsement. What students endorse or do not endorse in terms of health practices is heard and seen by the community. If schools stop endorsing phones and harmful online products such as social media and video games, parents and community will take this cue from schools.
Hey, Gretchen, I'm going to have to ask you just to wrap up. We got a lot of people here to testify. Appreciate your testimony. Just try to conclude if you don't mind.
Would you like to hear the science and experts?
Let's try to wrap it up in the next 20 to 30 seconds, please.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well,
If there's science and all that stuff in your testimony, then we'll be able to look at it. But we do have a lot of people here to testify.
Okay.
So I want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
I guess I'll just direct you all to Twinge and Height. They have very vast experience in social science and psychology and lots of research on this. Lots of books on it. Okay. Does anyone here today want to tell me that we should prioritize adult conveniences, patterns our public institutions have naively fallen into, and political priorities? If you are not in support of this bill, that is what you are telling me. You are telling me you put all those things over the well-being and education of my children and yours. You are telling me there is a system or political strategy that is more important to you than what the health data shows. I could have showed you UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. They have issued recommendations as well as information from PISA. And the World Economic Forum also was in support of UNESCO's report. So does anybody have any questions?
All right, we'll do questions at the end of testimony. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
With that, I will I'll ask Lindsay Graves, Stockton High School. There's that grand entrance she makes. I believe you have Mandy Dobson with you as well from Stockton High School. Welcome to our committee. We're going to ask you to keep your testimony to about 3 to 4 minutes, if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
Honorable members of the House K-12 Education Committee. I am Lindsay Cravens, 9 through 12 principal at Stockton High School.
And I am Mandy Dobson, counselor at Stockton High School.
Stockton is a rural 1A district in northwest Kansas. There are 296 kids in the district and 76 kids in the high school. We are testifying in regards to House Bill 2641, an act concerning education relating to school districts, requiring boards of education of school districts to adopt policies and procedures to prohibit students' use of privately owned electronic communication devices during school hours. We testify as strong proponents of this bill. Stockton High School is currently a phone-free school and has been since the school year 21-22. Our current policy states that students may use personal cell phone and/or electronic devices on school grounds before and after the school day. Their use is prohibited from 8:00 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. All devices are turned off in the school buildings and placed in their assigned yonder bag.
Each week, we have a rotation of 3 staff members that set up a station at the front door where they welcome the students and they check to make sure their phones have been turned off and locked into their yonder bags. The students are allowed to keep their yonder bags on them and in their possession at all times during the school day. Those same 3 staff members also go back to the station at the end of the day to send off the kids and help them unlock their yonder bags. We do have a few students that either do not have cell phones or don't bring them into the school, and so those staff members in the morning just kind of check them off so we know that they didn't come in with one and won't have a yonder bag in their possession. This station at the front door has also become a place where teachers gather each morning and afternoon to greet our kids and send them off. There's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 staff members out there every day.
Within the last 3 years, we have seen some more face-to-face interaction among our students. There have been a definite decrease in distractions in the classroom. The first year we implemented the policy, we had 10 cell phone infractions. This year, we've had 0 to date. School telephones are available in the office for urgent and necessary phone calls. In an emergency, the yonder bag can be cut open with regular scissors. Implementing phone-free policies in schools presents an opportunity to mitigate negative issues, such as heightened levels of anxiety and stress, and create an environment conducive to learning and development. By establishing clear expectations, we can empower educators to reclaim control over the classroom dynamics and facilitate meaningful engagement among students.
I am new to Stockton this year, but served as an administrator in a neighboring district for the last 5 years. That district did not have a strong, we're out of time.
If you'll conclude we'll give you about 20 more seconds. Thank you.
I would say in closing, we've talked to some parents who think it's a great thing. Staff, obviously, we've taken that burden away from them by them not having access to them. They're not competing with cell phones for student attention, as well as not having to be the police with the policy. Even some of our students, our seniors this year had phones as freshmen and have not the last 3 years, and they notice a change. There's less drama, of course. One of the other things, less distractions, and they feel they are better focused during the day and that it helps them with their self-discipline for sure. So in closing, we just want to say we support 2641 as we have witnessed those positive effects a phone-free school environment can have on students and their learning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And if you'll stick around for questions when we're through with the testimony, that would be amazing. Thank you. Next, I'll welcome Kim Whitman, a parent. Welcome to our committee.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Kim Whitman. I'm a parent of 2 teenagers in Overland Park. You can see in my written testimony my background, but I've done a lot of advocacy work in the last few years. I'm extremely concerned about our kids today. Are you? We all see them staring down at their phones at family dinners and restaurants while walking down the street, even when they are hanging out with groups of friends. So what do you think they're doing at school? They're staring at their phones. in class, during passing periods, at lunch, and even in the restroom. They cannot resist the undeniable pull of their phone. Many adults can't, so how do we expect kids whose brains are not fully developed to resist the urge to check their phones? They don't stand a chance against the addictive pull of manipulative algorithms and the predatory business model of social media. Children and youth need our help. What can you do? It's simple. Follow the research and support House Bill number 2641. The school day is a time to learn academically, learn to focus, learn how to study, develop a longer attention span, and develop comprehension skills. The school day is also a time for kids to interact with their peers, learn social skills, practice face-to-face communication, and create community. Do you think these things are happening in school today? They are not. I have 2 teenagers in high school. I'm currently in the trenches. Kids are struggling. Teachers are struggling. They're struggling to keep their students' attention. It's extremely challenging to compete with the fast-paced videos on YouTube and TikTok, as well as the intense pull of social media. One teacher shared she had to shorten her lessons to 3 to 5 minutes just to keep the kids' attention. She also witnessed that her students are fearful to perform in her theater class because they're worried they'll be videoed, that will be posted online, and they will be made fun of. Teachers constantly have to police phones. They are losing 5 to 10 minutes per class period policing phones. And what are administrators doing about it? Fortunately, there are ones that spoke today that are putting policies in place, but many do not have them. According to Common Sense Media Report, phone use during school hours is nearly universal, but varies widely, reflecting a patchwork of different school policies. 97% of participants use their phones during school hours for an average of 43 minutes per day. 43 minutes. What do you think they were doing for 43 minutes? Were they studying on their phone? No. Social media, YouTube, and gaming during school. Phones are a deterrent to learning. A London School of Economics studies show that banning mobile phones at school leads to an increase in student performance. The results indicate that after schools banned mobile phones, the test scores of students increased by 6.4% of a standard deviation. This is equivalent to adding 5 days to the school year or an additional hour a week. The effects were twice as large for low-achieving students, given the results banning phones could be a low-cost way for schools to reduce educational inequality. My time is up. I have a lot more to share, but I will let you refer to the online testimony. Lindsay shared some of the benefits. I wanted to share the disadvantages of an all-day phone-free policy that administrators have shared with me. 0. I've heard 0 disadvantages of putting a policy like this in place, and I urge all of you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Committee, we also have multiple written testimonies as proponents from neurocounselor, educator, more parents, and someone from the Blue Valley School District as well. Are there any more proponents, oral testimony that we may not have received that sent it in to speak today? Very good. Seeing none. Committee, questions for the conferees, for the proponents? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I can have Ms. Cravens and Ms. Dobson back, and then I have a question for Ms. Whitman too. They go back to the room. Welcome back. Thank you for the stories and the testimony that you've given, and I appreciate that. I'm just curious, based on the implementation of your program at Stockton High, what advice would you give in reference to the bill stating that there should be disciplinary actions? What are the disciplinary actions if students refuse? And I'm sure there was like a learning curve at the beginning.
There was a learning curve at the beginning, but I do want to say the parents were very helpful and supportive in it. If a kiddo did not, or said they didn't have their phone, excuse me, if a kid said that they didn't have their phone, I would call parents and check and confirm that. And then if they do get caught with one, then I take it in my office, make sure it's off, they do, and then parent has to come get it and they have a detention after school. It's basically a 3 strikes and you're out kind of deal. I've only had that happen one time.
Thank you very much. Did you have anything you wanted to add to?
I really don't. One thing, when we ran out of time, my previous school district did not have a strong policy, so it was left up to the teachers. Students were allowed to have phones in the hallways, and at lunchtime, were expected to put them away in class, but often didn't. And I will tell you that I did some research before coming here, and 1/3 of my discipline issues that I handled were all cell phone infractions. So
Fascinating.
I spent a lot of time
Well,
on
and
cell
just,
phone infractions.
oh, thank you. And just a follow-up, since I have you here, haven't been in the classroom teaching, I do understand that Chromebooks can also be a distractor. And I'm curious, what other technologies that you have found that have limited the students' growth and have, as you illustrated, have been detrimental?
Our students do have one-to-one devices. Most of them have Chromebooks, some of them have Windows Surface Pros. Luckily, we have a very good technology department that has filters, and we have shut down everything like Google Chat, anything like that. They were, kids are smart, and they're quick, and they'll get it figured out. So we just have to do our best to stay on top of it, and I think we're finally getting there.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for Ms. Whitman. Is she? Oh. It's my floor, man.
Yeah. So let Haskins, Representative Haskins ask one more question, then I'll go to Representative Estes and then Representative Younger.
There are rules. I'm just saying.
Decorum, my friend.
All right, Ms. Whitman. Ms. Whitman, thank you for your testimony, and I enjoyed reading it, and I appreciate the hyperlinks to your research there, and it gives me a lot to look at afterwards. I'm just curious, that's a pretty powerful presentation. How many times have you given that presentation to local school boards, and have you traveled across the state or anything else to share this information? And if so, what has been the reaction?
So I've been advocating in the Shawnee Mission School District since 2018 around misuse of devices, not specific to phones for that long, but now that my children are older and everybody has phones at school, it's become a real issue. So I have had individual conversations because I feel like public comment is one-sided and doesn't get very far. So I have talked to many principals. I've talked to principals in Blue Valley, that middle schools that have policies in place. I've talked to probably 24 administrators across the nation that have policies in place, and I've talked to many that don't. And what the ones that don't say, the reason they aren't putting a policy in place is parent pushback. The ones that have policies in place say there was very little to no parent pushback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Estes and then Representative Younger.
Ms. Whitman, if you could come back. I was intrigued by your testimony. Do you find examples in your research of what students are looking at? You mentioned some social media, but do you ever see gateway to things like gambling, poker apps, and so on?
I think the video gaming and the social media and the cyberbullying are top of the list. There are nonprofits out there that have a list of the most visited sites, most used apps in school, and in the top 10, 2 of them are social media sites.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is for Principal Cravens. I did not understand the word you were saying that described the bag. Could you say that slowly, please?
Sure, it's a Yonder bag.
Y-O-N-D-E-R?
Y-O-N-D-R.
And how much do they cost?
It's
approximately is fine.
For a year, it's about $1,300
per bag.
No, it's about $13 a bag. No, for the subscription for the whole deal for our school, it's about $1,300.
So you don't purchase them; you have a subscription. So if one does get damaged, it's included. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Well, that caught everyone's attention. $1,300 per bag. Right. Further questions from the committee? Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for my excitement, but Lindsay, who initiated this process for the school? You know, what steps did you take then? Did you just, boom, start it, or what were the steps that were taken for this then?
Well, when I came in there, that was the first push I had from all the teachers, was please, please, please get these phones out of these kids' hands, because they were tired of the disrespect, to be honest, and having to battle that. And then also parents were also talking to me about it, and as a parent myself, I understand that. So I talked to my superintendent at the time, and he was for it, and said, let's talk to the board, and they were also for it. I had talked to some other schools around us that had the Yonder bags. One of it was like my FFA instructor who had been to a school with it, but similar size of school. So I called in on a couple of their board members, teachers, and students that I knew, and checked that out. And so I started investigating it myself, and it kind of took off from there, so.
So you talked to your superintendent. Was the Board of Education involved in it?
Yes.
Did they approve this?
They did.
How, you know, I'm assuming you started August 1st when you took over your new job?
July 1st.
July 1st?
Mm-hmm,
So,
yes.
You know, you started right away, so did it get implemented that year, or did it take a year, or what? Did you have parent meetings to explain this, or I'm just trying to understand how this happened?
So we had it in place right at the beginning of my first school year as principal. So yeah, we took care of it within a couple months. Yep.
One more question, Mr. Chair. Did you have any parent pushback on this? And if so, how did you handle that?
Well, we had maybe a couple. Most of them, though, were in support, and when we reassured them that they could go to the office, and then that way we knew kids were going and coming and going, and why, and for their safety too, and that we do have email available if there's something. But again, we're a small school district, and we know our kids and we know our parents pretty well, and we can get a hold of them very easily. So
this is what grades?
High school, 9 through 12. They do not, but they are considering it for next year.
Once they get to high school?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if I understood you correctly, I get excited and I forget these things. And they carry these Yonder bags then, is that what I heard you say?
Some do. Yep.
With them, they can though?
They can. Yes, they can definitely do that. Most of them leave them in their locker.
Thank you.
Representative Hill.
Thank you so much for all the work you've done on putting this information together. I think this is, it's obvious the passion that you all have, and I think this is something that is very, very important. If you look through your research and all the things that you have discovered, what would you say is the one most powerful piece that sequestering cell phones does?
Engagement. I think having the kids engaged in class and engaged with their peers is so important for their development. That would be the one of many benefits of an all-day policy.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just open up to whoever wants to answer, but I understand they'd be banned at school. What about school activities? Is there any ban on those? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Will you come to the mic and answer that for the record, please? Just so people watching online can hear.
There's no ban on school activities. Now, during the school day, it's kind of up to the teacher if they want the cell phones put away, but like ball games and stuff in the evening, no.
Representative Stogsdale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had a question for you all. It sounds like this program's working for you in your school district. So you did this based on teacher input and then principal input and then school board input and parent input?
Yes.
No legislative input?
No.
Thank you.
Further questions? Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lindsay, did I hear you say that the teachers can, okay, if they have a class project, the kids can get them out and use them in class? Did I just hear you say
Oh, no, like if they were going on a field trip or something like that. No, they're not out for projects.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Sure. Any more questions? All right, then I have a couple questions for you all. So when you went to your school board, what were their thoughts on implementing it district-wide? Or did they just say, oh, you do your own thing at your school and we're good with it? Where are they at as far as district-wide, just out of curiosity?
Well, most of them are parents at the time, of high school students. And they thought we would try it there first. And nobody else has really asked. So, and it's going well for us. So we're just keeping going.
Very good. And just hypothetically, if I'm a parent in a district that doesn't really support a lot of this, they have a school board that doesn't take action on it. If you're a parent and you first go to your school board, you go to your teacher, go to your principal, nothing happens. You go to your school board, nothing happens. As a parent and a voter, where would you then turn to? You don't have to answer. I'll tell you. A lot of the parents in my district, guess where they turn to? They look at us and they say, we need you to take action. They follow the chain of command. They respect the chain of command, but they do eventually turn to the legislature and say, we may need your help. So, all right, committee, we're going to move. Thank you to all the proponents for being here. We're going to move on to the opponents part of this bill. With that, I will turn to Shannon Kimball first from Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome to our committee.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Shannon Kimball representing the Kansas Association of School Boards. You have our written testimony, and in it, it shares our member-adopted legislative positions that apply to this particular bill. We support the management of public schools under locally elected boards of education, including setting curriculum, staffing, financial management, and policies. Our permanent policies further provide that as the constitutional authority charged with management of local schools, the school board is accountable to district patrons through the electoral process and must be the final authority on local management decisions. We all, I believe, have the shared goal of doing the best that we can for students. Certainly, I haven't heard anything that the proponents said that I wouldn't agree with in terms of how I feel as a parent about cell phone use and some of the things that we need to consider as the impacts of that on our youth. But as I know you probably know, KASB's opposition to this bill really comes down to which elected body is and should be making the ultimate decisions on these issues. Decisions about what kind of electronic devices are allowed in classrooms or whether to allow them and under what parameters are exactly the kind of policy decisions that local boards of education are tasked to do by their voters. These are judgments of community values, of community needs, resources and infrastructure, and local boards are best equipped to work with their teachers, their families, and their district leadership to make these decisions. It's a partnership, and we take that very seriously. Boards and district leadership already have all the tools that they need to address the concerns that the proponents have raised about the impacts of electronic device use on our students. You heard a perfect example of that with regard to the approach that Stockton High School has taken. And in a very real way, these are decisions that parents need to be working in partnership with our schools and our locally elected school board members to make. As an example, my district has done something like what Stockton has done at our middle school level. we have virtually cell phone-free days for our students all day long. And I appreciate that those policies have real consequences. Our board has been supportive of that. And that's something that we are asking you to continue supporting. Let us work through these issues locally. $13 a device for a yonder, that'd be about $130,000 for my district to implement that program. That might not be the right choice for my district, even though it was the right choice for Stockton. So I do want to just share that there are perhaps other areas where these apps are useful, or these devices are useful. It was mentioned about IEPs. Some districts use safety concern reporting apps that are available to students on their devices. As a parent, there may be circumstances where you have a student who has mental health needs, and there are particular reasons why you would want to have different access. I do want to note that although the bill has exceptions written into it, for those particular kinds of concerns, the use has to be pre-approved. So I think that the exceptions are not broad enough to deal with the range of circumstances that arise in schools that would need to be addressed. And that is, again, why these decisions really need to be left to local boards of education to make. So in closing, I would just ask that you please allow our locally elected board members to continue making these decisions in partnership with their parents and their staff, shaped by input that is closest to the people that are affected. And we respectfully request that the committee decline to advance this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, I'll welcome Ann Ma from KSDE. Unless you were written only, I apologize.
Yes, we were written only, but I'll just reiterate, not your job, not our job, local job. Thank you.
I'm going to need you to wrap that testimony up, Ann. You're going over. All right, I will now welcome Timothy Graham back from the KNEA. Welcome back to our committee, sir.
So I remember when you had to get a pink hall pass to go to the payphone and then make a collect call to tell your parents you left your football shoes at home because you didn't have a dime in your pocket. So I know I'm getting old when my son doesn't know what a payphone is. So anyways, again, a lot like the bill we just testified on before. We really feel like this is a local control issue. We certainly don't want to weigh in on anything that was talked about, whether these phones should be allowed in the classrooms or not. There's plenty of other people that can weigh in on that. Again, our opposition is based solely on local control. This, like so many other issues, needs to be talked about for many of the reasons you've heard here already. It warrants a full discussion, and there should be action that takes place, but on the local level. So with that in mind, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. And before we get to question, I do appreciate the conversation. I think we can all agree this is an issue. I always love having these talks and these conversations because it gets all the information out there. And I know it's important. Like when I take my kids to the doctor asks them, how's school going? How are you feeling? How's your screen time? And they go into all the data. So we all know this is an issue, and I do look forward to it getting addressed one way or another. With that, open it up. Committee, we've got about 5 minutes for questions because we got to get to one more bill. Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure who would answer this, but do we have a number of districts that have, in Kansas, that have banned cell phones?
We do not have an exact count on that in terms of the data that we've collected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions, committee? None? Okay, very good. Well, we will close the hearing. We also have Judith Deedy from Game On for Kansas as written only testimony for the opponent's side. I will close the hearing on House Bill 2641. With that, committee, we will now open up the hearing on House Bill 2700. And I will turn to our reviser, Jason Long, for a rundown. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2700 would establish the School Library Rating System Task Force for the purpose of developing a rating system for all materials that are provided to students by public school libraries. The rating system under the bill would allow parents, teachers, and other school staff to be able to discern the appropriateness of such materials for students of differing age groups and grade levels. The task force would consist of 9 members. 4 members would be legislators appointed by the Speaker, the President, and the minority leaders of both chambers. 2 members would be parents of students enrolled in public school. 1 would represent the State Board of Education. 1 member would represent school district administration, and 1 member would represent school librarians. The chairperson of the task force would be the legislator appointed by the Speaker. The vice chair would be the legislator appointed by the President of the Senate. The bill would require the task force to approve a rating system and submit that rating system to the State Board of Education by June 30th of 2025. That is also the date on which their enacting statute would expire, and so the task force would no longer have any authority as of June 30th, 2025. The state board would then be charged with distributing that rating system to the school districts in the state. School districts, their boards of education would then have until September 1st of 2025 to adopt policies and procedures to implement the rating system, and then the rating system would have to be implemented by July 1st of 2026. The bill will go into effect on July 1st of this year, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for the reviser? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. Was this bill, did you write this bill?
I drafted this bill.
All right, thank you.
But it wasn't his idea, just to be clear.
I would
With
hope
all
it's not
legislation,
here.
I claim no authorship.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Very good. Any other questions? Representative Getz.
Thank you. Jason, would you talk through the fiscal note just a little bit on the details of kind of the what it would cost?
I have not reviewed the fiscal note prior to this meeting, so perhaps one of our research staff has had a chance to review it, or we can get back to you on that.
Further questions, committee, for the reviser? Jason, I have a question for you. In some of the messages I've got, it talks about specificities of a rating system, and I want to be absolutely clear. This does not establish a rating system. This tasks the task force with coming up with said rating system. Is that correct?
That's correct. The task force would develop the rating system.
So as of this point, we have no ratings. There is nothing limiting this right now. It is the duty of the task force, correct?
That's correct. The only guidance under the statute is that the rating system be developed to consider the appropriateness of the materials with respect to grade level and provide a clear method of rating such materials such that school district employees and parents and legal guardians can readily discern whether the material is appropriate for a student. That is the statutory guidance for the task force.
Very good, thank you. Further questions from the committee? Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, does the bill list does it talk anything about the expertise of these people in establishing a library rating system? I mean, what I saw was just people being appointed to it, but other than the one librarian, is there any expertise in this group?
No, there is no specificity other than, as you point out, the one member who shall be a school librarian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So to follow up on that, so leadership could appoint another librarian, a school board member per request, a superintendent,
the
chaplain.
Mr. Chairman, the legislative appointments for the Speaker are a member of the House of Representatives, a parent of a student enrolled in a public school, and a member of a local board of education or superintendent of a school district. The President likewise is specified to be a member of the Senate or a parent of a student enrolled in a public school.
Very good, thank you. Further questions for the reviser? Very good, thank you, Jason. All right, we're going to jump into testimony here. I'm going to give everybody, for the sake of time, try to limit your testimony to 3 minutes, please. And then that way we'll have time for questions at the end because we are up against a hard deadline when we got to be out of this room. So I'll open it up. Angie Stahlbommer. If I butchered that, I'm sorry, but I think I got it right. Welcome to our committee.
That's okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. I appreciate the timer. My name is Angie Stahlbommer. I am the Deputy Director and General Counsel for the Kansas Association of School Boards. And I don't want to walk off my testimony too much, but I know Mr. Chair asked earlier about how legislative positions are formed. So I just wanted to share with this committee, at the Kansas Association of School Boards, we have a legislative committee that is put together from school board members around the state. They take a lot of time in putting together positions, essentially, and those are given out to our member boards for input. They all are able to bring representatives then to vote on those positions in our legislative committees. So I'm here before you today in opposition of House Bill 2700, and that is specifically based off of those legislative positions. Since they worked so hard on it, I'm going to directly read at least those provisions from our membership, and then I will speed through the rest of it. So the reasons why we stand in opposition of this bill today is, one, we support management of public schools under locally elected boards of education, including setting curriculum, staffing, financial management, and policies. A second position that we have is that as the constitutional authority charged with management of local schools, the school board is accountable to district patrons through the electoral process and must be the final authority on those local management decisions. The third position that's implicated here is we support the development of relationships among local teachers, students, and families without additional restrictive legislative oversight, resulting in the diversion of time and money away from the classroom, dealing with bureaucratic tasks. And the last piece that I'll share with you from our membership is that we oppose efforts to directly or indirectly limit the board's ability to determine curriculum, library, and other instructional materials. So I really couldn't agree with what the State Board of Education member Ann Ma has said earlier today more. Truly, it is the State Board of Education's role to set in place standards for our local boards of education, and that our boards of education are in the best situation to approve curriculum, also to ensure that they are efficiently using their resources to ensure that they are able to put the right materials in the hands of students to support that curriculum. A couple of things that I would mention as I see my time is dwindling is, as a parent, there are a lot of different places we can go for redress of grievances. All of our schools have adopted policies that help them put materials in place and also allow parents to challenge those materials. Also, state law in KSA 723120 subsection F allows for parents to withdraw their students from activities that they believe are against their religious teachings. So there are several different out clauses for parents. I will close by saying that we really would love to impress upon this committee just our position that these decisions are most definitely decisions that should be made in combination with parents, working with our hundreds of thousands of students, our thousands of board members, and our tens of thousands of teachers working together. Thank you very much. I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you so much. Next, I will turn to Ann Ma. Do we get that right? Are you oral on this one or written?
Got to speak out about this one.
All right. Welcome back.
Not quite as short as my cell phone testimony, but all along the same lines. Thank you again for having us today. The State Board opposes this bill for any number of reasons. First, we already have currently updated library standards for schools. I think you should all have a copy of them there. We just updated those last fall, and these are very helpful to libraries in determining, how kids use libraries, all the kinds of things that libraries really need to know. What this bill proposes is not a rating system, but a poor substitute for community values, a way for all communities to look at things or to be forced to look at things just one way. As a former legislator, I would not want somebody to know I voted for that, because not all communities are the same. They don't all have the same values. The Board of Education considered material placement last fall. We had a presentation on it, and even though, if you know anything about our state board, you know there is no agreement on our board about what should be in those libraries. We had everything from left to right and in between. But the one thing we did agree on was it wasn't our job. And we don't think it's your job either. It was not our job to tell those thousands of elected local board members and their parents and their communities what they were supposed to think about the materials in their libraries. They don't need our help. Kansas Association of School Boards already has great guidelines, and most of the districts I know already have procedures in place for if a parent has a complaint about a book or some material, for those things to be addressed. And that's where those decisions belong. We believe this is simply not the legislature's job, and it's a gross violation of local control. Even if you get a few parents who didn't get their way, that's usually how they wind up here. But a few noisy voices should not decide what communities all across the state should think or feel. Thank you very much, and I'd be glad to stand for questions.
Thank you, Ann. Now we'll turn to Timothy Graham with the KNEA. Good to see you today, sir.
Today.
It's been a while. How you been?
Got to tell you guys no again, and I don't like to do that, honestly. But HB 27 calls for a minimum of 4 members on the task force to be politicians. And don't take that the wrong way. I have a great deal of affection for most of you, and appreciate the process. But this number would grow to 5 if the Speaker of the House chooses to select a local school board member as his or her 3rd appointment. Additionally, the bill only calls for an appointment of 1 librarian to the board. The imbalance of practitioners versus politicians is concerning. KNE has been consistently vocal about the need to include practitioners in the process of policymaking, and this issue is no different. In the spirit of time, I'll let you guys read about our thoughts of academic and intellectual freedom. And just because I'm going over them, don't take that as an indication that they're not very important, because they're extremely important to our members. And I try to do a good job of putting that in here. But again, given the concerns above regarding the makeup of the task force, we're really worried that politics will take precedence over practical matters. The task force members may be tempted to take less than ideal decisions that are rooted in political pressure instead of what's in the best interest of the student learner. Politically based decisions could easily prove to be harmful to the academic and intellectual freedom, and even lead to some blatant censorship or unintentional censorship. And by the way, there's 4 legislators out there that'll be slated to be on this committee, and they, whoever they are, should be telling you not to pass this bill now, because you're going to be giving them a terrible job before the communities and having to come up with these decisions. This is going to be a very, very controversial task force, and I wouldn't want to be on it. The debate over curriculum, classroom materials, library materials, and the like is not a new one to this nation. There are countless examples of differing views, opinions, and outcomes. But one thing is consistent, is there is a process in place for all of these situations. Oftentimes, these bills are predicated on the notion that the process does not exist, or worse, that educators are acting out of inappropriate motives. And that generally is never the case. This issue is quintessentially, and this goes back to the argument I used in the 2 bills prior to this, this is quintessentially local in nature. We strongly believe that the processes in place have been established with a great deal of professional thought and should be the outlet for these concerns. Legislative action on this, we believe, would be an overreach. I want to finish with saying this, and I've got about 10 seconds left. Kansas NEA has asked several educators to provide, or a few educators today, to provide testimony in an attempt to extract this issue from the hot national debate that has become, and to insert Kansas voices into this conversation. We hope that you'll consider what they have had to say in their testimony. 2 of them are written, and one of them will certainly follow me in her testimony. We asked that the committee oppose 2700, HB 2700, but we do hope to continue a positive dialogue that could result in an understanding that could possibly prevent the feeling that the process that's laid out in this bill is even necessary. In other words, if we have an opportunity to let our educators, particularly our librarians, talk to you guys and talk about the processes that are in place, I think that it would tamp down some of the anxiety that's caused by these one-off situations here and there that lead us to, oftentimes, and it leads everybody to overreach and overreact. So that's what we're trying to do on this. Thank you.
Sam, anybody that says no to a conversation with you, I would tell them they don't know you that well. So thank you. Next, I have Mary Sinclair, president of the Kansas PTA, who may be on WebEx.
Do you see, am I here?
Yep, we got you. Floor's yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Thomas and committee members. On behalf of the Kansas PTA, thank you for the opportunity to provide remote testimony. We are also speaking in opposition to House Bill 2700 and this legislatively defined school library rating system. I will be brief and probably a bit redundant to what you've heard so far. The bill is in conflict with the PTA standing position and legislative priorities. Kansas PTA supports the expertise of our educational professionals to determine the process and selection of our public school library books. Our school librarians and media specialists are an essential member of the building staff who hold certification and often master's degrees in education. School library collections are explicitly curated to align with the district and state education standards with grade level learning goals and to supplement key content across the curricula, as well as the unique interests of the school community. School districts across Kansas have policies and procedures. Again, this I think was noted previously for parents who prefer to restrict their child's access to certain books in the school libraries. Typically, these steps are handled simply through talking with your classroom teacher and your school librarian. Another level of parent protection and parent voice can be directed through the local school boards. This is guided by model policy from the Kansas Association of School Boards and allows those elected local school board members to serve as an impartial final arbiter if there are issues that arise within the school system. We also, you can look to external feedback. 80% of our public school parents are satisfied with their children's education, as noted in recent Gallup polls even. The same poll found that adults who reported dissatisfaction really had no connection with the public schools, had no children in the public schools, very little, if any, direct interaction. House Bill 2700 is not necessary. 9 in every 10 parents in Kansas enroll their children in our public schools. This is not a public school problem. This is not a Kansas issue. We have processes in place to meet the needs of our parents and individual families. Kansas PTA urges committee members to pass on this bill to uphold the Kansas Constitution and the authority vested in our locally elected school board members, as well as our elected members to the State Board of Education. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. All right, that is all the oral testimony I have, unless there's some, okay, go ahead and come on up. If you could state your name, and then welcome to our committee.
I'm Christy O'Borney, and good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak, Chairperson Thomas and members of the committee. Like I said, I am Christy O'Borney. I'm rise in opposition of HB 2700. I'm a librarian, if you couldn't tell, because who else would deck out in full children's literature? And I teach in Hayes with USD 489. I come to you today as an educator of 21 years. I've been a librarian for 19 of those years. I'm a member of KNEA and KASL. I went into education because I enjoy helping others learn new things. Seeing the sparks happen when a student finally gets it gives me purpose. I decided in high school I wanted to be an educator. Then in college, after my children's literacy class, I knew I belonged in the library. Connecting with students over books makes my heart happy. In addition to being a librarian, I'm a wife and a mom. My 3 kids have all attended the Hayes Public Schools, and my oldest is now at Fort Hays State University. My children have done well in school due to the wonderful educators and leaders that we have in Hayes. I'm here today to discuss the concerns I have about HB 2700. I'm a member of KASL, like I said. I could stand here and talk about intellectual freedom and the right for parents to decide what their children read, but I'm not going to focus on that today.
Instead, I'm going to discuss a few parts of this bill that are most troublesome for me. First and foremost, the bill calls for a book rating system that a task force will develop. A rating system would be putting subjective value judgments on literature. So a small group of people will be telling others what they believe a piece of literature would be rated as. Then these criteria would be sent out for librarians to decipher and decide how each book is rated, again, subjective. Secondly, the makeup of this task force only includes one librarian. For a system that will greatly impact the day-to-day functions of school libraries, I believe there should be input from people who would have to implement and maintain this system. A certified librarian is required to have a master's degree and therefore has gained the knowledge and expertise needed to curate a diverse, age-appropriate collection for works for their libraries. To me, they should be included in greater numbers on such a task force than just one representative for all Kansas public school libraries. I am also curious as to why people think this is a need, when in fact there are research-based systems already in place that certified librarians use to determine age appropriateness for the books they select. Systems like Lexile, Accelerated Reader, and the Fontes and Pinnell guided reading leveling systems all give age ranges and interest levels for books they have leveled within their systems. These systems are curated by literacy scholars and take into consideration the readability as well as the content when determining the reading level of a book. So why are we trying to create something that's already in place, research-based, and widely used by certified school librarians? Something else to think about is the money that implementing the system would cost. If this rating system were mandated to be used in public school libraries, then the time to label and cost of materials is important to think about. In my library alone, I have 16,600 items. And if each of these takes 5 minutes to determine what label to put on it and label that item, the total amount of time to label the books in my library would be 1,383 hours. My district pays $22.50 for curricular work outside of my day. So that would cost my district alone $31,117. I can assure you my district does not have that money. So let's talk about schools that don't have a certified librarian. There are 1,305 public schools in Kansas as of 2022, and only 619 full-time certified equivalent librarians in the school systems. So less than half of the public schools do not have a full-time certified librarian. I only have like 2 more paragraphs.
We'll give you a little bit of time. Go ahead.
Okay. So many of our schools are staffed with aides or volunteers, either half or all of the time. Don't get me started about this disservice to our students. In fact, I wrote my entire capstone project on this for my literacy specialist degree. See me for some really excited reading if you would like to read that. Notice I have said certified every time I refer to a librarian. Please remember my previous statement about librarians needing a master's degree to do their job. If this rating system goes into effect, it would be the job of the person managing the library collection to determine what each book would be categorized as and then labeled. And in more than half of our schools, this will be done by individuals without the background and knowledge to do this well. Finally, I do not believe creating a state committee to create this system and dictate it is in use of public schools is appropriate, as we've already talked about before. This should be something that is done at the local job. It should be determining appropriateness of reading material as a job of parents and students, degreed professionals, not a government committee. I am committed to matching kids with great books that they want to read. Through my work, I help young readers discover new worlds, both real and fantastical, see other points of view, learn empathy for those different than themselves, and see themselves and characters in the stories they read. I do not need a rating system to help with this. My experience and knowledge I gained in library preparation classes are the basis I stand on when I am connecting with a reader and helping them find their next great read. I ask you to please oppose this bill, and thank you so much for your time.
Very good. Are there any more oral opponents that I might have missed or might have come in late? Very good. Thank you. All right, committee questions. We have about 10 minutes. Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Angie Stahlbaumer. Angie, you cited a law that gives parents religious freedom. Could you please tell me what that was?
Oh, there we go. If you go to KSA 72-3120, it's subsection F. This is a statute that's about required attendance at school, compulsory attendance.
Thank you. My next question was for Ms. Aborny. Of the rating systems, the leveled up readings and accelerated reader, do any parents participate in those processes?
As far as like when the programs that
those
created them?
Yeah, when those ratings are created or analyzed, do parents participate in that process at any level?
I can't speak to that because those are huge systems that, I mean, they have people on staff that do all of the work. They do publish like their ratings, their scales and how they go about their formulas for creating those things. But as far as if there's parents and things on that, that would have to be something I would be happy to research.
Thank you very much.
And then, ma'am, I am not seeing your testimony. If we could get that sent, that would be amazing. And if you have issues with the email, I can get that to you. So apologies for that. Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my question would be directed to Angie. Really, any of the opponents, whoever, I mean, is best to answer this. Do we currently have a rating system for movies and media that is shown in school?
That's a good question. I think a lot of school districts do have rating systems, and oftentimes they do send home consents if they're going to require some sort of watching that would be questionable. I would hope they wouldn't, but there are policies in place that cover that too.
Is that school district by school district, or is that basically a standard across the state?
Yes, I would say that is school district by school district on rating systems.
Do we know how they get the input in order to set those ratings?
I guess I cannot say, I don't have full data on that. All of our districts and all of our schools do now have site councils, so that's an appropriate use of a site council. Anytime a board is considering a policy like that, the parents and patrons would have input through the board meeting process also.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I can have Ms. Small back up to the mic, please.
Yes.
Thank you for testimony. Thank you for being here. This is more of a direct question that maybe from your experience that you could help the committee. Reading through your standards that you provide, I love the first one that says school libraries are spaces where children and youth can read, think, learn, create, explore, and grow, either individually or collaboratively. That implies academic freedom, allowing the children to discover. But then at the bottom here, first paragraph, it says, these standards are designed to provide a framework for school librarians and other co-teaching partners. Now, I'm curious, why the word framework? Why not a regulation? Why not something more with teeth?
Well, I think we call these model standards, and we don't, have the experts at KSDE to write these, so we depend on librarians around the country and their associations to help guide us. So we just provide a framework because, again, a lot of the decisions are made locally, and this is not something we assess on. So it's a model standard, but we think they're pretty good. Like I said, they were just updated last year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for our school librarian who's here.
Could you state your name again? I didn't write it down. I
I
apologize.
missed that too, I'm sorry.
Hey, Christy O'Borney.
Do you, in your professional training or in your work experience, have widespread evidence of parents being incapable of opening up backpacks and assessing the materials their children bring home, or being otherwise incompetent to parent their own children's reading?
Nope.
It's interesting you brought that up because I can, out of respect for my superintendent, I told him I wouldn't bring it up again, but I could point to several instances of my kid where the assignment was required to stay in the classroom, and one of them actually made national news, so just a little comment there.
I can point out that my kid was an amazing reader and brought home a book that was well above her level of maturity, and I sent it back. I went right to the librarian and said, that rack will not be appropriate for my child, and the librarian said, thank you.
And it was nice that it was able to get home. My child's was not. I had to get a picture on her phone, and it had to be turned in before they left. So thank you. Further questions, committee? Representative Younger.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't bring my computer. Were there any neutral or proponents to this?
We got proponent late this morning. It was after the deadline, and so we plan on posting that, but we do have some written proponent testimony, yes. But it didn't make it before the deadline, so I'll get that posted, yes.
There was one?
At least, yeah.
Thank you.
Further questions? Very good. Okay, just a couple things before we close out committee. I want to point out other states, we took a different approach to this because other states have banned books. You know, when we talk about Florida, Texas, Missouri, Utah have different forms of this. And we didn't want to go that route just for the simple fact that they're all getting challenged in court. So we thought this was more of a way to say, come up with a rating system, come up with a labeling system, because, and there's a few statutes I will point out to the committee, if you want to write them down. Kansas statute 216401. Look that statute up. It's very interesting. It deals with promoting obscenity to minors. And a lot of some of the emails I got that didn't want to be on the record as far as written testimony, just sending me emails, mentioned some of this stuff, because the kicker is for years, at least the last couple of years in this committee and others, we've heard that none of this material that we talk about exists. We've seen document after document that it does. And some of the testimony that I got that didn't want to be on the record pretty much confirmed some of those fears. So when we talk about this stuff, we know the issues are there. And I think this conversation has been good because it also, like the other bills we work today, it lets everybody know that we're keeping an eye on this, but also at the same time, we do want our locals to take action on this. The issue that we're having is a lot of the times parents go to their boards. I've gone to mine, and there's no action taken. So these parents will eventually come to us and ask us to bring these issues to light. Now, whether or not this bill passes, comes to the floor, gets to the governor's desk, is yet to be seen. But it is our duty as legislators, in my opinion, to listen to our constituents and bring these issues forward in hopes that changes are made without necessarily legislative action. But to do that, I think it's incumbent on us as representatives of the people to make sure that we bring these issues forward, especially on behalf of our constituents that may not feel they're getting a voice. What I also appreciate the fact is it also gives other people that may not necessarily agree with us a chance to come up and speak, because I'm sure everybody in this room has been up here hundreds of times to testify in committee. But anyway, I just want to make sure that point got made. So with that, committee, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2700. And then tomorrow, it does say final action on previously bills heard today. We're not going to take action, as I mentioned yesterday. We're still waiting on language, compromising language on a couple of the bills we worked earlier this week. I believe we have that on a couple. I will get that finalized, and we will potentially have final action on bills tomorrow, and I will make sure the bill numbers get out tonight for you to review, okay? So with that, we got to get out of here. I believe the Senate may have a meeting coming in here as well, 3:30.